Welcome to the Deep Dive. If you're learning English, I bet you know that feeling. Your head is just swimming with new words, maybe some tricky grammar rules, all those little cultural bits. It's a lot.
Oh, definitely. That feeling of information overload, super common for language learners. It's more than just memorizing stuff, isn't it?
Totally. It's like you're trying to rewire your brain a bit.
Yeah, to think and, well, communicate in a whole new system.
Exactly. So today, we're diving deep into how we can actually make that process more effective. We've been looking at this great TED-Ed video all about study techniques that are actually backed by science.
Mm. Yeah, that video was interesting. And the techniques aren't just, for students cramming for exams.
No, that's what blew me away. They mentioned medical residents using these same methods to learn, like life-saving surgery techniques.
Wow. So if it works for something that high stakes.
Right. Imagine what it can do for learning English. So our mission today, for all of you working hard to speak smart and think smart in English, is to pull out the really actionable strategies from that video.
Things you can actually use, like starting tomorrow.
Exactly, to learn better and make things stick. Okay, let's get into it.
Right. So maybe before we jump into the specific techniques, it's helpful to think really simply about how memory even works, especially for language.
Good idea. Like what's happening in the brain?
Kind of. Think of it like forming new pathways. When you first encounter a new English word, maybe ubiquitous, it's like making the very first faint track through a dense forest.
Okay, so that first exposure, it's just a tiny little trail. Very easy to lose, I guess.
Pretty much, it's not very strong yet. So to make that path, that memory, stronger and easier to find again, you need to use it.
Walk the path again, basically.
Exactly. Hear the word, see it written, try saying it, use it in a sentence. Each time, that connection, that neural pathway gets a little bit clearer, a little stronger.
Ah, okay. And that repetition, that practice helps move it from just being like temporarily held somewhere.
To more permanent long-term storage.
Yeah,
And it gets linked up with other things you already know.
like connecting ubiquitous
Yeah.
to other words, that mean everywhere or something.
Precisely. And sleep plays a huge role in this consolidation too, sort of organizing everything overnight.
I think lots of English learners feel that. You struggle with something one day, sleep on it, and suddenly it makes more sense.
Yes, that's your brain doing its work. And importantly for language, just trying to remember something like searching your brain for the right way to say something in English, that act of retrieval itself strengthens the memory.
So even if you struggle to remember, the effort helps.
Absolutely. It reinforces the pathway every time you successfully recall it, making it easier next time you need it to speak or write.
Okay, this brings us nicely to the first big technique from the video, which is super relevant for anyone trying to speak smart in English. It's testing yourself.
Right. And testing here doesn't mean, stressful exams with grades.
No, not at all. It's more about active recall, forcing yourself to pull the information out of your brain rather than just looking at it.
Exactly. Think flashcards. Instead of just reading the word and flipping to the definition.
You try to remember the definition first before you flip.
Yes. Or cover up the answers in a grammar exercise and try to do it from memory. That active struggle to retrieve the English knowledge is way more powerful for long-term learning than just passively rereading your notes.
It makes sense. Rereading feels productive, doesn't it? Because the information is right there. It feels familiar.
It does feel easier. But that familiarity can be deceptive. It doesn't mean you can actually produce the word or the grammar rule when you need it in conversation.
Uh-huh. So testing yourself, even just low-stakes quizzing, shows you what you really know.
And crucially, what you don't know yet. It highlights your weak spots in English, so you can focus your practice where it's needed most.
Okay, but what about when you try to test yourself and you get it wrong, or you just blank? That can feel a bit demoralizing.
Yeah, it can, but here's the fascinating part. The video emphasizes that making mistakes during this kind of self-testing is actually good for learning.
Really? How does that work?
Well, when you struggle to recall something and maybe get it wrong, your brain is kind of primed. It's activated related concepts. Then, when you see the correct answer, it sticks much better. The effort and the error make the subsequent correction more potent.
So, messing up the pronunciation of a word, then being corrected and practicing the right way. That helps it sink in better than if I just read the phonetic spelling.
Exactly. The struggle makes the learning deeper, so don't fear those mistakes during practice. They're part of the process.
That's actually really encouraging. Okay, so technique 1, test yourself, embrace the struggle. What's number 2?
Number 2 is called interleaving, basically mixing things up.
Mixing things up. How does that apply to learning English?
It means instead of having one study session where you only do vocabulary and another where you only do grammar, you should mix different skills or topics within a single study session.
Okay, so maybe you spend 15 minutes on new verbs, then switch to doing a short listening exercise, then maybe review some prepositions, all in one go.
Yep, something like that. You cycle between different types of English practice rather than focusing intensely on just one thing for a long block of time.
Hmm. Why is that better? It feels like focusing helps you get in the zone.
It might feel that way, but interleaving is more effective for long-term retention. When you keep switching topics, say, from grammar rules to vocabulary recall to sentence structure, your brain has to constantly retrieve the different types of information.
Ah, so it's forcing that active recall again, but in a different way, like loading different programs each time.
Kind of. It prevents you from just going on autopilot with one type of task. Your brain has to work harder to distinguish between different concepts and rules, which strengthens your overall understanding and memory.
And I guess you might start seeing connections between things too, like how a grammar rule you just reviewed affects the vocabulary you're learning now.
Precisely. It helps you build a more integrated understanding of English. So, practical tips. Mix flashcards from different topics. Switch between reading an article and then maybe writing a short summary. Alternate grammar drills with pronunciation practice. Don't just stick to one thing for ages.
Mix it up. Got it. Okay, so we have active recall through testing and mixing things up with interleaving. What's the third key strategy?
The third one is all about timing. It's called spaced repetition.
Spaced repetition. I think I've heard of this one. It's about not cramming, right?
Exactly. It's the opposite of cramming. Instead of trying to learn everything in one marathon session, you review the material at increasing intervals over time.
So you learn a new set of English words today.
And then you review them again tomorrow, then maybe in 3 days, then a week later, then 2 weeks later, and so on. The gaps get progressively longer.
That medical resident study in the video really hit this point home, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. That was powerful. The group that spaced out their surgical practice over weeks performed significantly better and retained the skill much longer than the group that crammed it all into one day.
And we all do it, don't we? Especially with language. Cramming vocabulary the night before a test or right before a trip.
We do. And it might feel like it works for the immediate need, but it doesn't build lasting knowledge. Spaced repetition works because it taps into how our memory naturally consolidates information.
Giving your brain time to, process and file away the new English stuff between reviews.
Exactly. Especially during sleep. Each time you successfully recall the information just as you were starting to forget it, you reinforce that memory pathway, making it much more durable.
So it's like strategically reminding your brain at the optimal moment.
Precisely. And thankfully, you don't have to figure out the schedule yourself. There are tons of apps and software like Anki or Memrise designed specifically for spaced repetition systems, especially for language learning. They handle the scheduling.
That's handy. So these three techniques, testing, interleaving, spacing, they work because they align with how our brains are actually wired to learn.
That's the core idea. They make learning more effortful in the short term, maybe, compared to just rereading.
But much more effective and efficient for building long-term, usable English skills.
Exactly. It's about learning smarter, aligning your efforts with the science of how memory works, which is crucial if you want to speak smart and think smart in a new language.
Okay, so let's quickly recap for everyone listening who's working on their English. 3 big takeaways from this deep dive into learning science. 1, test yourself regularly. Active recall is key.
2, mix it up, interleave different English skills and topics in your study sessions. Don't just focus on one thing for too long.
Right. And 3, space it out. Use spaced repetition to review material at increasing intervals for long-term retention. Ditch the cramming.
These aren't just abstract theories. They're practical tools used in really demanding fields, and they absolutely apply to mastering English.
It's empowering, really, knowing there are proven ways to make the hard work of language learning more effective.
Definitely. It gives you more control over your progress.
So maybe a final thought for you listening. Try these out. Seriously, experiment. See which combination works best for your learning style and your English goals. Maybe you find testing yourself really clicks, or perhaps interleaving feels more engaging.
Yeah, become your own learning scientist in a way. Pay attention to what helps things stick.
And, if this sparks your interest, maybe even look a bit more into the science of learning and memory itself. Understanding how you learn best. That's a superpower, not just for English, but for anything you want to tackle.